Hello! If you sailed on the Mayflower in 1620 by Ann McGovern, illustrated by Anna DiVito. What did the Pilgrims find on Cape Cod? The Pilgrims made 3 exploring trips on Cape Cod to look for a place to live. On one of the trips, they found a basket of Indian corn. The Pilgrims needed corn to plant so that they would not go hungry the next year. But they knew the corn belonged to the Indians. It was not theirs to take. At last, they decided to take as much of the corn as they could carry. They said they would pay back the Indians later. Why didn't the Pilgrims stay on Cape Cod? Some of the Pilgrims wanted to stay. The Indians had cleared the land for planting. There were ponds of fresh water. There was plenty of fish. These men said they should not waste another day looking for a better place. It was almost winter. Many people were sick. Food was almost gone. They must start building homes before it got too cold. Other Pilgrims said no. The water along the shore was not deep enough for ships to come and go. There were too many Indians. The fresh water was in ponds, and ponds dry up in summer. Surely there must be a better place than Cape Cod. Back and forth went the arguments. At last, the Pilgrims decided to make one more exploring trip. This was to be the last chance. What happened on the last exploring trip? Only the Pilgrim leaders and the strongest men left the Mayflower and set out in the shallop, 18 men in all. The wind howled. One of the Pilgrim leaders, Edward Winslow, wrote that the water froze on our clothes and made them like coats of iron. When the sun went down, they sailed to the nearest beach. They saw Indians cutting up a big black fish, a kind of whale. But the Indians ran away when they saw the Pilgrims. That night, the Pilgrims saw the Indians fire miles away. But in the morning, there were no Indians to be seen. The next night, around midnight, they heard a loud cry. The Pilgrims fired off their guns. The cry stopped as suddenly as it had started. Somebody said it must have been wolves. In the morning, they heard the same awful cry they had heard in the night. Wolves in the morning? Impossible. Then arrows began to fly. Indians! Miles Standish fired a shot. The Indians yelled. It sounded to William Bradford like wooch, wooch, ha, 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 wooch. Arrows flew. Guns roared. Soon the Indians ran away. The Pilgrims set out in the shallop again. After some hours sailing, Bradford wrote, it began to snow and rain. About the middle of the afternoon, the sea became very rough. They broke their rudder, and it was as much as 2 men could do to steer with a couple of oars. One of the men shouted, Be of good cheer! I see the harbor! But the storm grew worse. The mast broke and fell into the sea. They were heading straight for rocks. The men turned the boat around just in time. Soon they came to an island, and the next morning, Saturday, the storm was over. But the men were too tired to do much work. They made a fire, cleaned their guns, and rested. Sunday, they spent the day in prayer. On Monday, they were up before the sun. Then the 18 men sailed away from the island to try once more to find a landing place on shore. In a while, they reached land. It was December 11th, 1620. They had come to Plymouth, the place Captain John Smith had discovered and named 6 years before. Did they land on Plymouth Rock? No one knows for sure. The rock we now call Plymouth Rock was the only good landing place along 2.5 miles of sandy beach. Many people think that must be where the Pilgrims landed. Why did the Pilgrims decide to stay in Plymouth? There were running brooks and fields already cleared for planting. There were 2 rivers, and the harbor was safe for small boats. And they saw no enemy Indians. The 18 Pilgrims sailed the shallop back to Cape Cod to tell the others about Plymouth. And on December 16th, 1620, the Mayflower with all the Pilgrims sailed to Plymouth. Plymouth. How did the Pilgrims plan to build their town? The Pilgrims decided to have one street that would go from the shore to the top of the hill. The top of the hill was a good place for their big guns, their cannons. From there, they could see the countryside. They could look out across the sea. The Pilgrims planned to build houses along both sides of their street. They named the street First Street. The Pilgrims could not build houses for everyone that first year, so they worked out a plan. The men who had no wives or children would move in with families. Some of the smaller families would move in with larger families. The houses would be crowded, but everyone would have a roof over his head. The land was measured. A plot of land was given to each family. Larger families were given more land than smaller families. What was the first building in Plymouth? The first house the Pilgrims built was the Common House. At first, it was used as a storehouse for tools and as a shelter for the men who were working. Later that year, it was used as a church and even a hospital. Guns were kept there too. The men and the boys began to chop down trees. They sawed pine logs to make planks. They split cedar trees to make clapboards for the Common House. Most of the men went back to the Mayflower to sleep. A few stayed on shore to watch over the tools. Many days the weather was so bad the men could not work. Because of the bad weather, it took the Pilgrims 26 days to build the Common House. Did they work every day? From Saturday afternoon until Monday morning, no one did any work, not even cooking. That was the Pilgrims' time to worship God. They prayed, sang psalms, and listened to William Brewster's long sermons. This made Captain Jones and his crew angry. Captain Jones wanted to work every day. He wanted to help the Pilgrims get settled as fast as possible so he could sail the Mayflower back to England. Goodbye.